Let's start off with the basics. Desertification, land degradation, and drought. What are they and how are they all interrelated?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity for us from the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism to be able to provide information to our public. And I think land is a very basic resource which is very, very crucial for all of us existence. Now, desertification simply means that the land is being converted into desert by a way of losing vegetation, for example, and the soil obviously becomes degraded. And when that happens, as you have mentioned, productivity of that particular land or the capacity of that particular land to be able to produce the kind of food that we require obviously declines. And as a result, we say that land has actually lent itself to the process of desertification.
Yeah.
Now, equally, drought, with climate change setting in and all these problems, we are having processes also being driven by these extreme weather events. And as a result, we have got prolonged drought situation. And obviously, particularly in Africa, where we had already situations of unpredictable rainfall patterns and so on. So the situation is exacerbated by climate change and hence drought problems. And obviously, land degradation, as you mentioned, is a result of all these processes as you are losing soil nutrients and all these things that are very critical for our own survival. So it's therefore incumbent upon us to ensure that we do what is required to protect the soils and to do the kind of practices that are going to ensure that the quality of living of our community is granted.
Yeah. Now, Johnson, nature's got its own way. Mother Nature does what it does, and it doesn't need to explain herself to us. But it brings me to my next question of our activities as human beings to these issues and what role climate change also plays. Because climate change has been exacerbated by the industrial activity, the hunger for more, for more cars, more industrialized industries, and all those things. But talk to us about how our activities have contributed to what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, many a times, obviously, as we are going about pursuing our development, we tend to use unsustainable way of managing resources altogether. Really, whether it's our pattern of development where we are using fossil fuels and releasing a lot of gases in the atmosphere, what they call greenhouse gases. Yeah, and these are emissions, obviously. Including your carbon dioxide, the methanes, and what have you, and obviously they form a blanket around the globe, and then they cause the entire globe to warmer. And as it's warming up, the other systems are also being impacted by that, including now obviously the patterns of the rainfall and other natural processes that are being changed, whether it's now animals that used to adapt to certain situations will no longer be able to exist because of that. Maybe frequent floods as well as droughts. And the more droughts happen, it does not give the nature to recover as it used to do in the past. And so as a result, all the systems basically turned upside down. And all this affect the way we live, affects how we for example, know that our rainy season is usually from say November through to March, but because of these changing patterns, we might find ourselves that December has come, there's no rains. And as a farmer who's depending on the land for nutrition, you find it very difficult when to start, and so on and so forth.
What are some of the effective strategies currently being implemented to combat desertification and land degradation? And we're talking about now ourselves here in Namibia.
Yeah, we are certainly doing a number of activities. Some of them involve things like agroforestry, for example, where you are trying to keep some of the trees on the land so that the land is not exposed to soil erosion and what have you. Integrated soil fertility management, for example, conservation agriculture, improved irrigation. All this ensure that the land is used optimally, the land is restored, and that the land is managed in a manner that it maximizes ecological, economic, as well as social benefits. So these are some of the activities. Of course, tree planting, very, very critical as well. But also, the way really we manage our agriculture. Sometimes we keep planting the same crop. So we need to do sometimes what they call intercropping, and also avoid as much as possible monocropping, which is really the same over and over. And also make sure that you at least put nutrients in the soil so that you maintain the integrity of the soil. So those are some of the measures that we put in place to ensure that the land continue to support us. It's a base for our economic survival.
Yeah. Looking at policy, what is proven to be effective in preventing land degradation and managing drought, and how are governments incentivizing sustainable land management practices for farmers and landowners?
Yeah, obviously policies alone are not adequate, but we have strategies in place. We have, for example, the drought strategy. We have our targets because we are part of the United Nations. We are signatories to the UN Convention on UN Convention to combat desertification. And so therein we have some targets that each country has put in place to ensure that we achieve what we call land degradation neutrality. So therein we really trying to come up with measures and strategies to ensure that whatever activities we are doing, at least we are able to sustainably manage the land. And we've got a number of programs and projects that are in place currently with the support of the United Nations organization called FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, and other interventions, whether you are there with UNDP or what have you. But we are all trying to make sure that we implement integrated land management approach so that all activities are planned for, land uses are planned for, and then we ensure that what we use here on this particular piece of land is taken from the landscape approach, and that biodiversity is conserved. And in the end of the day, we are doing everything in an integrated manner. So to ensure that one type of practice does not affect the entire system.
When we look at the technological innovations over the years, the world is obviously moving at such a fast pace, and technology is basically in every facet of our life. When we spoke off camera about the Internet of Things, how everything is connected to everything. When you look at how do we monitor and combat land degradation in terms of using technology, incorporating technology?
Yes, we're using things like remote sensing and satellite imageries. Obviously, we need to understand how the system has changed over time. And once you understand that, you'll be able to know that we now obviously need to reverse the situation. And whether it's the vegetation that is fast disappearing, whether it's the agricultural patterns, the expansion thereof, and the conversion of natural environment into crop fields, for example. So we now need to obviously change the way we do things, and we have obviously been monitoring the situation over time. We have seen that we are degrading the land a lot more, at a lot more rate, at a lot more faster pace than before. So we need to ensure we do things in an integrated manner, and we continue to ensure that we keep some vegetation on the land, because once we have the vegetation on the land, the biodiversity will be there. The organisms, the soil microorganisms will continue to be there, because if you just have one type of vegetation or one type of crops, then those organisms that are suited with or associated with that particular crops are the only ones that are going to be there. But that's not enough. You need all the bacteria, you need all other microorganisms that are going to keep the soil functioning. And therefore, the variety of stuff you have available on the land, the more those soil nutrients and those soil organisms are going to exist in that particular area. So we've got to restore. So if this decade is a UN decade of restoration, and restoration means that we have to try to do everything in our power to ensure that we go back to the state that it used to be.
Now we understand the government can't do this by themselves. The community obviously has a very huge role to play, and given the fact that many of us Namibians are subsistence farmers and based in rural Namibia, how do you educate them about the changes that are taking place? Because many of us, many of our people believe that the reason why we're not getting rain is because God is angry with us. I don't know what we've done wrong, but we're perhaps not praying enough, and that's why, the rain is being withheld from us. But they don't understand that, the climate is changing. How do you get that message to the person on the ground in the village saying, like, look, Mhango will not grow as it used to anymore because things are changing now? How are you encouraging them to do what you've just described about, diversifying their crop?
Yeah, in fact, a day like this is the World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought. It's really aimed at creating that awareness among the community of the presence of these challenges. And but we should not despair. It's also to inform the community out there that there's many ways that we can tackle these issues. And the more we talk about it, the more we bring this information out to the public, the more we'll be able to ensure that we reverse land degradation and we recover from drought. So the kind of stuff that I mentioned, for example, what's going to propel us to recover from a situation like this, but the restoration and try to keep the system as integrated as possible will assist us going forward, and will help us in a long way to ensure that we, one, restore our lands. Secondly, we manage the land in such a way that it's going to continue to support us. And thirdly, we need to ensure that public information is provided to the public to understand that the system is changing and we need to adapt with it.
Obviously, our different countries have different challenges, but what do you see as the biggest challenges for us in the fight against desertification and land degradation in the next decade?
Yeah, by and large, it's really where you have population growth, where you have a lot of people, and especially in northern parts of our country where we have higher population growth. That's where we are also observing trends of land degradation at a faster pace than before. Whereas in the areas where you have less population, the situation is not as serious and dire. But so we obviously, Namibia cannot talk of really population growth at this stage because we are about 3 million or so. However, in certain areas we do have that challenge, and it's really incumbent upon us to utilize the natural environment we have in those areas, the resources in those areas, utilize it in a sustainable manner, so that we are able to continue, or at least the future generations are able to derive the same benefits that we are getting from these resources.
Absolutely. Lastly, talk to us about the event that will take place on the 17th of June. I understand it's going to be in Nana. Just run us through the activities on that day.
Yeah, as I already mentioned, that this day is observed worldwide, and in Namibia we are no exception. And this time around, the events, the national commemoration events are going to take place in Nana town on Monday, and a number of speeches or key speakers are going to be talking there, and the keynote address will be given by our Minister of Environment, Honorable Shifeta, on Monday in Enana. And so we really, request all our members of public, all Namibians, to make sure that they tune in, but also they do their part to reduce and bring the problem of desertification to some sort of level that we can at least control how we are going to continue to live in this situation that is so changing. Obviously, with the climate change and all these other associated issues, we've got to be resilient. We need to build capacity to be able to adapt to the changing situation. And certainly we need to make sure that we manage our soils. We have to plant more trees. We have to ensure that biodiversity is conserved, because once we look after nature, nature is going to look after us.